and we should be ready to go.
Okay, all right. Well, welcome everyone to the Sandburg Library Evaluating Information Election Edition workshop. I'm Marla Turgeon, your Sandburg librarian. Rebecca Eaton, our library's coordinator of library services, is co-hosting this workshop with me today. So in this workshop, we'll be discussing fake news, misinformation, and disinformation. We'll show you how to evaluate election-based websites and how to identify social media trolls. So let's get started. First, what is fake news? To put it simply, it's false information made to look like a factual news story. There's three categories of fake news. The first is misleading news. These are stories that are based on a manipulated image, an out-of-context quotation, or a questionable scientific studies. Biased news is information presented with an ideological slant. It doesn't tell the whole truth, just one side of it. Okay? And then satire uses humor, irony, exaggeration, ridicule, and false information to comment on current events. Now, this leads us into information disorders. Misinformation is not meant to cause harm. It's spread by people attempting to be helpful. Here's an example. Urban legends, we've all heard them. They're untrue stories that are passed along by sincere people who truly believe them, and they feel the need to inform others. Then there's disinformation, which is meant to cause harm. For example, the spread of anti-Semitic speeches and writings by the Nazi Party during the 1930s and 1940s. It was meant to encourage bigotry and hatred toward those of the Jewish faith. So why would anyone decide to create fake news? Well, first, for profit. Clickbait stories use sensational headlines such as, "You won't believe this," or "You'll never guess what happens next," to get the consumer to click through to their website and gain advertisement dollars. They make money two different ways. First, with impressions, which is when someone lands on the page, or then with clicks when someone clicks on the ad. With influence, you can buy followers. Social media bots are becoming really good at mimicking human behavior to make it look as though you have a lot of fans. They can also purchase up or yes votes on Amazon to increase product sales. Then there's entertainment. One of my favorite sites, The Onion, is a satire website with today's news and pop culture commentary. And last, to provoke, trolls. They prank, argue, harass, and threaten people online, usually on social media sites. Trolls love the power trip. Next, I want to talk to you about the information cycle, so you'll understand how information is produced and distributed and how it changes over time. Usually, it's used to describe the progression of media coverage relating to a particular newsworthy event or topic. The progression of the information cycle is connected to the amount of time after an event. On the same day of the event, you'll see news on social networking sites such as Twitter and Facebook, then on mobile communications in the form of texting, and in mainstream media, which includes TV, radio, and internet news sites. On the next day or the week of, you'll find the information in newspapers. In the following week or weeks, you can read about the event in popular magazines and government informational websites. Then, 6 months later, we'll begin seeing the event in scholarly journals. 1 year after the event, the topic will show up in books and government reports. As you notice the progression, keep the idea in mind that as we learn additional information about the event, we can also analyze the coverage and discuss its impact. So that's it for me for a little while. Now on to Rebecca. She's going to talk about website evaluations.
All right, so now we're going to get into election materials, and we will be using a few polls throughout the workshop. Now keep in mind they are anonymous, so don't feel like somebody's going to know what you're saying. Our first one is, are you a first-time voter? Do we have any here? Everybody see the poll? we'll go ahead and keep that up for just a few more seconds. Looks like we have a couple of folks who haven't voted. All right. All right, we'll end that poll. So awesome. About over half of the people here are first-time voters. Well, good news for you. We have an election on Tuesday. So this will be your first time. You can hopefully have either mailed in your mail-in ballot if you planned to do that already, or you'll go to the polls on Tuesday. Okay. Go ahead and take that down. All right. And what better time to put your college study cramming skills to use than the week before the election? And whether you're first-time voters or not, the resources listed here can help you prepare. The list here is by no means a complete list of voter education resources, but they are a few general nonpartisan options that can help you learn about the election process. Okay. Next, we'll be tackling website evaluation for a few select voting resources. Some questions to keep in mind during evaluation are: who created the site and who's funding it? Who are their partners? What is the site's purpose? In our case, does it aim to educate or does it aim to sway you? Where did they get their information? When was it published? And why is the resource reliable or not reliable? Okay, so our first case is a site called Ballot Ready. I am going to go ahead and take us over to a different screen. Can everybody see that all right? Marley, you want to let me know?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we can't really take the time to get into all of those 5 Ws or into every little facet of these websites. However, we're going to go over a couple of them. So for each one, we're going to look at who they are. Can we trust them? Right? So on Ballots Ready About Us, you'll see a few things here. So down here, they'll tell you that they are backed by the University of Chicago, the National Science Foundation, and the Knight Foundation. So all are pretty much nonpartisan funders, right? You'll also see a lot beyond this, even throughout their entire website, that they are dedicated to voter education. Right? They want an engaged electorate. Down here, you get to meet their team. So if you scroll through, you'll see that there are a lot of diverse voices here, to the point where you even get to meet a couple of their dogs, which is fun. Now, the other thing about Ballot Ready that you'll want to know is, let's see, why is this one different? You'll want to know more about their research process. And I forgot. Websites are funky like that, right? They have different things in different places. So we'll go back to their homepage and get their research process from the About Us section. All right. So you can see here, and again, we do not have the time to go through all of this, but this is their entire research process laid out for you. So if you want to know how they look at endorsements, how they handle candidate submissions in terms of candidates informing the website on their issues and their stances on issues, if you want to look at candidate bios, candidate photos, they tell you exactly where all that information comes from. They even say here that they take candidate information from campaign websites, campaign Facebook pages, Twitter profiles, and LinkedIn pages. What's really important is being as transparent as possible about where you're getting your information. So they're really good about that. Now we're going to go back to the PowerPoint. And we have another poll for you. Again, completely anonymous, so you don't have to worry about not knowing the actual answer to this. I'm going to go ahead and launch this. Can we trust Ballot Ready? In your opinion, on the little bit of information that we went over today, do you think that we can trust them? right, so we just have a couple more folks who need to answer. And if you don't want to, that's fine too. All right, we'll go ahead and end this. All right, 2 people said definitely, and 4 said maybe. Again, we don't really have time to go through everything on these websites, but yeah, that's an appropriate response, perfectly appropriate. I'm gonna go ahead and close this out. All right, so Ballot Ready actually is a thumbs up nonpartisan resource. And here's a bit about why. Again, we didn't get to go over all of this, but they do have a diverse staff. That means that you're getting multiple perspectives to inform the research process, and you're not hearing from just one group of people who share a culture or agenda. They are also funded by nonpartisan organizations, meaning that you don't have people feeding money in to get you to sway towards another candidate. They don't have a hidden agenda. Their goal, their primary goal is voter education, right? They have a clear research process that you can cross-examine. They don't keep any of that hidden. They're a very objective source. When you're on their site, and if you have a chance to explore it more, you don't get the impression that they're encouraging emotional responses or trying to sway you towards one candidate or another. The next one that we're going to look at is iVoter Guide. And I'm going to go ahead and take us out to that. So bear with me here. All right, so as soon as you get to the iVoter Guide website, the first things that you see are grounded in God, rooted in research. You can get sample ballots, voting information, candidate evaluations, and more. All right, this seems pretty run-of-the-mill. You can put your zip code in, get your personalized ballot that has all of your candidate information on it. When you get down here, move this out of the way, you can vote by issue. So if you were to go to Right to Life, Religious Liberty, National Defense, Healthcare, etc., you would be able to see which party, what their views are or their stances are on each particular issue. So they do focus primarily on Republican versus Democrat here. All right, just like Ballot Ready, we're going to take a look at who they are. So we'll go down to our team. I apologize, with the election next week, the traffic is kind of high and some of these sites are a little slow to load. All right, so this is the Meet Our Team page on the iVoter Guide website. So you have good old Richard, Debbie, Jim, Art, Brad, JB, Bob, and Buddy. All right, so if you'll just kind of notice who they are, take a look. They also list their partners here, so who funds them, who works with them to, bring this content to you. So you get a lot of pro-choice, pro-family organizations. So you have the Louisiana Forum Action, you have Freedom's Heritage Forum, which is Kentucky's conservative PAC, Indiana Family Action, Wisconsin Family Action. Then you get down a little ways, you have Moms for America, the Ohio Christian Alliance. So a lot of, and then you have Wall Builders, you have a lot of conservative Christian organizations funding this and partnering with this website. Right. Next, we'll go to our research. How do they do their research process? Let's take a look at that. And again, I apologize, it's a little slow. Let's wait for that to come up. If that doesn't come up in a few seconds, we'll just sort of briefly touch on what they actually have on that page. When you get to it, it's a lot of graphics and visual aids, but they don't really tell you much about how they actually use them and use that information. Let's try it one more time. Okay, so that's the fun of technical difficulties during workshops that we can't control, unfortunately. But again, I think we have plenty of information from this website already on what we've seen alone to go ahead and go to our next poll. So let me go back to the PowerPoint. And next one. So after what you've been able to see, again, I apologize that we couldn't get to the part of the site that I wanted to. Can we trust iVoter Guide? All right, we have a couple of people who have answered. We'll give it a little bit more time. Like I said, if you're really not sure, it's completely okay. You can just make your best guess, or you don't have to vote at all. Though please do vote on Tuesday. That's my PSA for the day. All right, so we'll go ahead and move on, share those results. All right, so 4 people said no way, and 1 person said maybe. Again, both are completely appropriate responses. I'll go ahead and close this and we will go over why. Let me bring up this. Okay, so iVoter Guide is definitely a biased site with a conservative agenda. However, this site also gets what we call an if it floats your boat rating, and I'll explain why. Okay. Just a second here. So they claim to be nonpartisan and are slightly more subtle than other conservative sites, but they clearly want you to vote for Republican candidates who support their values, like choosing pro-life and supporting Second Amendment rights. They have a conservative staff, supporters and partners, a majority white. They label candidates as liberal or conservative. If we would have had a chance to get into their research process, they have what they call a scorecard. And so they actually rate candidates as liberal or conservative based on how they are likely to vote on certain issues, which again is fine, but in this context, when you're trying to be nonpartisan, language is important and the language they use is problematic. Their research process is unclear, unlike Ballot Ready, where they actually laid everything out for you. If we had gotten to the research page for iVoter, you would see that they have a lot of eye-catching pictures instead of actual information that really means anything. Also, when you get into their candidate information, and again, this is if you have time to explore the site on your own, it's very interesting actually. A lot of their research is dependent on candidate surveys. And if the candidate didn't answer the surveys or respond to the surveys, they would fill in that information with sources that they've gone out and procured on their own, and they will leave notes about it. And then that's how they develop their scorecard. All right, which in itself is kind of biased, right? They also encourage an emotional response, especially in terms of pro-life, if you were to explore the rest of the website. Now, why we say that this site gets an if it floats your boat rating is because you might already know that you're a conservative voter and you're just looking for more information about your candidates and your platform. And honestly, that's okay, so long as you're aware of that bias. Again, this resource isn't necessarily wrong, but you should be careful with the information you find there. All right, so the final website that we're going to take a look at, and let me get out to that, and hopefully we don't run into any more technical difficulties, is called Vote 411. I'm going to go back to their homepage. Marla and I were doing a practice run earlier. So their homepage says election information you need, and it's brought to you by the League of Women Voters Education Fund. Okay, so they're pretty good about trying to get first-time voter information out to folks. We'll scroll down a bit. You can kind of see their partners here. They have a lot of corporate sponsors. We will get down to their About Us section, find out a little bit more about them. pretty much plastered all over their About Us section is that they were launched by the League of Women Voters Education Fund, which is great. But as you go down, it just tells you more about the league and not as much about the actual site itself. Okay. We can also take a look at their sponsors and partners. We'll look at that next. So they are sponsored or partnered with the US Vote Foundation and also with the NALEO Educational Fund's Go Vote program. Again, they have a lot of national corporate sponsors like Target and Seventh Generation. They also have several state sponsors, mostly from Missouri. I'd be curious to know why. But that's just a little bit more about Vote 411. And again, I wish we could get into more of this, but with time constraints, we really can't. But if you'd like to stay after, we can always go over more outside of the recording too. All right. So with what we were just able to see from this website, would you say that we can trust Vote 411 to give us proper voter education resources? Leave that up a little bit longer. We have about half who voted. All right, a little bit closer. Again, it's completely okay to guess. All right, well, you all are doing amazing for having just seen like little bits and pieces of these websites. So I'm gonna go ahead and share these results. So a huge chunk of people saying, yeah, maybe, which is again, completely understandable. What we're gonna say on this one is another, but if it floats your boat. And here's why. So
I hate to interrupt Rebecca, but we're still seeing the Vote 411.
Oh my goodness.
Instead of back to, yeah, the PowerPoint.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, you know, just because I love that little whatever floats your boat icon, we'll go ahead and bring that up for a second, and then we will go back. So a very basic review of Vote 411 reveals that it's somewhat of a problematic resource. First, it's funded by the League of Women Voters, a left-leaning organization. Second, the questionnaires have leading questions with a liberal bias. And again, we know that you guys haven't had a chance to look at this, but I encourage you to go out and look at these resources later just because they're very interesting and they give you a different perspective on voting resources. So they ask a lot of important questions, but they come from values from the left. They're questions about how to prevent gun violence, climate change, equal access to healthcare, and how the candidate would address racial injustice, among others. There are some pros to this site that make it harder to determine if it has a hidden bias. It doesn't encourage an emotional response, but instead it's a call to action to vote. It also doesn't endorse a specific cause or candidate. So you won't find explicit statements about combating racial injustice or the need to address climate change. Overall, it's really not a bad site, but there are better nonpartisan resources out there. All right, so we've kind of got the idea, a general idea of websites, but how do we handle what we see on social media? Well, besides unfollowing Uncle Roy on Facebook, what do we do? The first thing we need to understand is that not all the stuff we see on social media is posted by real people. And beyond that, we also need to look inward and recognize that we have our own biases that affect the way we interact with information we see online. So the next section will cover confirmation bias, filter bubbles, internet trolls, and how to break free from the cycle of bias and misinformation. Before we jump into the social media conversation, it's really important to address something called confirmation bias. It's defined in the Encyclopedia of Social Psychology as the tendency to process information by looking for or interpreting information that's consistent with one's existing beliefs. We need to recognize that no matter how factual the website or the information that we see on social media is, we still have personal biases that affect how we interpret or whether we believe that information. For example, I'm fairly liberal and I'm a woman. I understand that because of those two factors, I was more willing to look past the bias on the Vote 411 website and accept it as a nonpartisan at first glance. I also know that because I'm not religious, I almost immediately called out the iVoter guide as a big no the moment I saw it. So I also had to take a step back and acknowledge that similar to the Vote 411 site, iVoter has its benefits, and I can't discount it completely simply because of my own bias. That's why both sites received a no, but if it floats your boat rating. Neither site is necessarily a great or terrible resource, but we all need to recognize that our existing beliefs and political views factor into our initial judgment of that information. This also applies to social media. So now I'm going to throw it over to Marla for filter bubbles.
Okay, well, because it's comfortable to read and discuss things that we believe in, it's very easy to allow ourselves to be placed within what is called a filter bubble. Google, Facebook, Amazon, and others use algorithms and cookies to track us. They display users' similar perspectives and ideas and remove opposing viewpoints. All this without our consent. Since we're selectively exposed to information that aligns with our beliefs, our feeds are tailored to keep us engaged. This in turn helps to generate profit for them. And it keeps us from being objective and constructive with our thoughts and ideas. I have a good example here. Google searches will show different results for people. I could search for Joe Biden on Google, and depending on my past likes and dislikes, the search engine will cater my results to my preferences. Whereas my politically opposite neighbor will receive results catered to their taste. So we'll have different results instead of neutral outcomes, which is how it should work, but it doesn't. So how do we break free from this filter bubble? Well, make those algorithms work for you. Every time you like a page, article, or post on social media, you put yourself further into the echo chamber within your filter bubble. So if you're going to like Joe Biden on Facebook, then check out Donald Trump too. When you do this, you'll switch up the rotation of suggested articles. Here's some other ways to break those algorithms. Choose one or two unbiased sources to follow. Last month, I muted sources that feed into my confirmation bias on Facebook, and now I'm getting updates only from Reuters. And because of this, I've noticed lately that I'm enjoying social media again. Also, don't feed into the temptation to block everybody that you don't agree with, especially during this election season. Next, algorithms can't determine what you really like if you thumbs up and heart everything. Plus, it'll make Uncle Roy happy again. When you do this, it keeps those pesky algorithms guessing. Then change your feed settings to pick up the most recent posts. This restricts the algorithm, and you might see an account that you haven't seen in a while. So now I'm going to give this back to Rebecca, and she's going to talk with you about online trolls.
All right. So now that we understand our bias, we need to tackle those trolls. You've likely heard of or seen internet trolls on social media sites before, but what are they? No, they're not the monster under the bridge who won't let the billy goats get their grass. They're people or bots who post provocative comments intended to provoke people and produce emotional responses, often with the aim to spread misinformation on a massive scale. And some just do it to be jerks because they get a rise out of it. In season 20, episode 2 of South Park, Kyle's father, Gerald, takes on an online persona called, and I'm sorry, Skank Hunt, and finds immense joy in his new hobby of trolling women online. Of course, for those of you who don't know South Park, their content is satire and meant to poke fun at serious issues. So let's take a look at this example of Gerald trolling women as he drinks wine and listens to a Boston soundtrack. He's really feeling it.
Hey, just want to remind everyone about the ice cream social to benefit homeless teens. Looking for volunteers.
Hey, I'd like to volunteer to kick you in the vagina. Where do I sign up?
This is my daughter at the triathlon today. Go, little girl.
Your daughter has a mustache. What the hell's wrong with your office, bitch?
You've been dick slapped.
All right, so of course, very vulgar, right? This example is on the mild side of behaviors from Gerald and his troll friends, but it exhibits the major common characteristics of internet trolls. That is, excessive swearing and vulgarity. They're persistent and pushy, as you see Gerald continuously posting, and they tend to use bad grammar and spelling and often type in all caps with missing or excessive punctuation. So they thrive on getting folks riled up. All right, so how do we respond to the Geralds of the world? Standard disclaimer here, this chart is produced by a left-wing organization called Smart Politics to stop right-wing trolling, but this can be applied to anyone. Troll behavior is not unique to any political party, right? But we've got to acknowledge the bias here. Please keep in mind that ignoring the behavior can also be a good solution, but you can use this strategy too. First, you'll want to humanize the troll. Say hello and introduce yourself like you would with any new person. This is, after all, a person on the other side of that post. Second, you'll want to set boundaries. Establish that their behavior is not okay and will not be tolerated. Third, do not feed into the behavior. Don't respond to provocative statements. Remember, their intent is to get an emotional response out of you, so don't give them that satisfaction. And finally, if absolutely necessary, block them and let them know that you're doing it. Don't engage further. I wouldn't recommend the exact wording of that final block that says, say they can return later when they're ready to behave, because this can come across as condescending. Also, try to remember that blocking is a last resort reserved for the worst offenders. We want to burst our filter bubbles, but if we block everyone with a different opinion, we'll always be stuck in that echo chamber Marlo was talking about. Okay. So before we head into the Q&A session, we want to leave you with a few notes. So when online or anywhere really, be civil and be responsible. Remember that there are usually people on the other end of social media posts. Next, take a minute to think about what you read before sharing, posting, or commenting, and try to avoid heated emotional arguments. And finally, vote. We know this message has been shoved in your face for months now, but we want this one to come from people who care about you and our community. So please be sure to make your voice heard. All right. So now we are ready to get into Q&A. Anybody can feel free to type your questions in the chat, or you can feel free to unmute and go ahead and talk to us. I know we're all maybe a little starved for social interaction these days, so feel free to speak up if you want to. Anybody?
Thank you, Selena. Yes, please go vote, she says.
Yay. Hi, is there anybody else?
Exercise your rights. That's right. That's right.
Feels so odd not being able to see the chat.
Yeah, no questions.
Okay. So we can give it another minute in case anybody's typing.
Did you want to also tell them about, put up the link to the LibGuide?
Oh, yes. Well,
You're going to wait a
able
little
to do
bit.
that? I cannot get into the chat right now,
Oh,
but I can send that to you.
okay. Well, let me, there we go. Come on. Oh, exit full screen. There we go.
All right, I just sent it to you.
Okay. Well, guess what? I don't have my email open.
The way the world works, folks.
I know. I closed everything down because.
Oh, wait. Finally, it showed up. There we go.
Oh, okay. You got it then. All right.
I apparently needed to move something out of the way, and that was fine. All right, so all of the resources here, including once we get the recording finalized from this, will all be on that LibGuide that I just linked to in the chat. It also has some resources for a fun little quiz called Spot the Troll. Not everybody is a Gerald. You know, sometimes you just have Russian bots from the IRA. So if you've never heard of the Internet Research Agency, definitely get a hold of Clemson's quiz. It's very fascinating, very interesting information. It's about how most famously, you know, that we've heard of is the IRA. So the Internet Research Agency from Russia tampered in the 2016 elections. And they've actually been continuing to create bots that go onto social media, and they will just post a lot of false information and things that, you know, really get people emotional in order to influence a lot of people to voting a certain way. And it's just a really interesting look into human psychology in the first place and how all that works. Definitely test it out. All right.
Oh, you're welcome, Selena. I just saw your comment too.
Yeah.
She said thank you.
Well, thank you everybody for coming. Like I said, this PowerPoint will also be up with the recording. So if you need any of the links off of this for anything, oh, you're welcome, Amber. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Like I said, if you need the links off of this for anything, it will be on the PowerPoint slides. That'll be on the LibGuide. Plus, we also tend to post this in our Moodle classroom and on our library website too. So lots of different places, and you can always contact us whenever. Our contact information is on this slide. You can get to us at library@sandburg.edu. You can call us at 309-341-5257, or you can get to our website at sandburg.edu/library. It's a nice, quick little shortcut to get to our website. All right.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for coming today.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You.
Thanks, Steve.